Yeah, why do you think that we strive to find and also create beauty? I've read a book recently. I've read a couple books by Steve Pinkner recently, and I'll give you time
Okay.
to think about it while I explain this. So
Mhm.
these books by Steve Pinkner, one of them was The Language Instinct, and the other one was How the Mind Works. And towards the end of the book, he gave a few chapters, and they were they seemed to be write-offs for
Mhm.
spirituality and religion and art and beauty. And the way that he explained it was a spandrel. And so a spandrel is something that is the consequence of a creation. So
Yeah.
on an
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
archway, okay,
The
yeah,
arch and there's a little hole in the middle, right?
there's little top, and you can put art onto that, and that thing evolves because of the archway itself. Another
Mhm.
example of a few other examples of that would be in Russia. There was a dog breeder. He was a fox breeder, and he was trying
Yep.
to breed these coats of this particular fox. And to do that, it was a lot easier for him to selectively breed the dogs in a way that would make them more friendly to each other and also humans. And
Yeah.
over time, that resulted in these foxes that looked like puppies, essentially.
Yeah. They're
And
adorable. I've seen them.
yeah. So, and then also, I'm getting this one from
Yep.
Robert
You're good.
Sapolsky.
You're good.
And then in, I want to say again, it was Russian tubes, in the Russian tubes, so the Russian metro. There were dogs that became more and more non-domesticated, so
Yeah.
more and more vicious to humans, and they ended up looking like wolves. And so these seem to be spandrels that relate to each other in the sense that if you want a dog to be nice, it's going to be much cuter, and if you want a dog to be mean, it's going to look a lot more vicious. And in that
Mhm.
sense, why do we find things beautiful? Why do we find beauty in things? Why is there a drive to, as you've said, find chaos in things and
Mhm.
use that chaos to create and to explore our own minds?
Yeah.
It seems like something that could be potentially gratuitous if you create too much chaos. Obviously, you can create too
Yeah.
much chaos and
Mhm.
break down a system, but
Mhm.
to have everything in order and
Mhm.
have a totalitarian
Yeah.
regime around order and around the beauty that we create, it
Mhm.
seems to be. I really like the way that Alan Watts put it, was that if you dream a dream that you have control over, then over time you want to dream that dream less, and you want less and less and less control
Yeah.
until you finally forget that you're dreaming. And that's the idea of the Brahma Yama, or the
Yeah.
Brahma Maya.
Okay.
And we're all a part of a god that
Mhm.
doesn't know that it's all part of one thing, and we're all
Yeah.
actors in a play.
Yeah, it's the Brahman and the veil of Maya and the
Yes,
fractionating of existence and how we are all reflections of the self exploring itself because why not, right?
exactly, right.
It's and like I think that's a really profound aspect of existence, and I think beauty might be a reflection of that, like chaotic interplay, right?
Hmm.
Perfect uniformity is a blank slate, and our brain. I love. My friend likes to call our brains electric soup.
Hmm.
Um, and ultimately it is like to discuss what even the idea of consciousness is probably beyond the scope of what I understand.
Hmm.
But the emergent property of random chaos in our brains and electricity firing in different ways force implicitly creates chaotic patterns or fractal patterns. There's a really cool book I'm reading about chaos theory. Essentially, it's
Hmm.
by, oh god, I don't remember who it's by, but it was recommended by Robert Sapolsky, the gentleman that wrote Behave.
Yep.
Fantastic book. He touches on spandrels as well in one of his lectures he does, but talking evolutionarily of the chin, actually,
Hmm.
which is a spandrel in human faces because it's we have a certain length of jaw required in order for us to actually be able to chew.
Yep.
And without muzzles, there's a certain threshold length that this point and protrusion will exist because we need all the musculature to make sure the jaw still functions.
Mm.
So our chins in and of themselves are a vestigial or like a spandrel feature due to the fact that our muzzles retracted down to the face or face level and allows
Yep.
ourselves to have this planar face. There's a lot of evolutionary adaptationists that would say, oh, it's a feature to allow for, it's been sexually selected for, it's this, that, the other thing. And it doesn't seem to be, it doesn't follow any of the rules of anything that we do. And so
Hmm.
ultimately think it's one of these kind of vestigial features that exists kind of spuriously. In the same way that I think beauty has that kind of almost spandrel aspect. It's something that breaks the mold, or if there's uniformity, we're going to create some sort of disorder in order to draw visual focus or create a visual aesthetic of sorts. I have a really hard time to, oh, hello. Aren't you
Yeah,
adorable?
look at this guy.
Oh,
He gets all
oh
mad
buddy.
if I don't let him up.
It's hard. Beauty is such a weird concept to me because I don't, is there like a psychological or like a physiological or a like mental construct that is more than social that beauty is derived from? Because like what is to describe what is beauty in like a definitional term?
To address that first question, I would
Yeah.
say that maybe religious experience would be associated with beauty. So something that I experience when I look at beautiful things, and
Mhm.
particularly art, is inferior.
Yeah.
And there's something about that, and it's not only you can look at it two ways. Essentially,
Mhm.
you could look at it as a pushing or a pulling figure. So in the in the pushing way, it's inferiority, and it tells you that
Mhm.
you're not as good as
The thing you're seeing.
exactly. It's
Mhm.
there's nothing in the world that's more valuable than art, and that's
Okay.
from a and that's like from a I'm saying that literally.
Yeah.
The most expensive pieces of fabric in the entire world are art.
Yeah.
There are museums that contain billions and billions of dollars worth of this thing that's
Yeah.
essentially
Mm.
a pigment on a white canvas.
Yeah.
And so it is invaluable in that sense. And the other sense is that I would say the pulling factor is that it it gives you an inkling of what you could maybe be. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's the it's I think art lets us tap into what Carl Jung would consider to be the anima or the animus, is the
Okay.
unconscious mechanism outside of ourselves that so for males it's a female entity, and for females it's a male entity, and I
Yeah.
think that that's a in some way trying to find a way to integrate the female and the male in the
Yeah.
individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what beauty does, and what art does is
Mm-hmm.
it allows us to create an idea in our mind of what we could be.
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and it does give us some religious experience. You could stand
Mm-hmm.
in front of a piece of art for hours on end and look at every single piece of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way that Pinkner explained it was that in the there are common motifs in art that tend to be successful in creating
Mm-hmm.
or uh, or calling people in. So one of that could be, and I think a lot of it's actually associated with the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
So there are hills and pathways that lead to something that's unexplored, and this territory that could be something more than what we are right now. So
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine has this really beautiful painting that he got from Goodwill. I think it was like $5, but he just loves it.
Yeah. Love
And
those. They're great.
it's a harbor, and in the harbor it's rainy and dark and cloudy, and going out of the harbor it looks like the harbor in Lord of the Rings, where there's
Mm.
this beautiful light shining
Yeah.
down, and it's this beckoning for exploration, a
Mm-hmm.
call to do something greater. It's the call to
Yeah.
this journey outside of ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what Pinkner thought. And Jane Goodall had this cool finding. I think this friend told me about this. It was that he was reading a National Geographic, and she said that in 10 years we're going to find something very cool about chimps, or within 10 years she was
Mm-hmm.
just hypothesizing that we're going to understand their psyche a little bit better. And I think it was 30 years later this group were able to watch a chimp tribe find a waterfall, and they all started dancing around in a circle, and they just had a great time. And I think that that's another type of religious experience, is actually
Yeah.
finding the thing. So there's
Mm-hmm.
both the aspect of searching for the thing, or being aware that
Mm-hmm.
the thing outside of yourself that you could achieve exists, as well as when you've actually achieved that thing. And I think that's maybe a pull to actually creating art, is
Mm-hmm.
the action of creating something and seeing what you have created. And even that
Yeah.
is, I'm not sure about you, but whenever I've done painting and put paint to brush or paint to brush to canvas, I always find at the end that I have all of these nitpicky. Sorry, one second. Let me let this guy
Oh,
go.
you're good. You're good.
He gets so fidgety. We anytime that I've actually tried my hand at brush to canvas,
Yeah.
always find at the end that there are so many things that I could have done better. And if I go back and try to fix all of them, I'll drive myself crazy. And so I have
Yeah.
to just allow it to be as it is, as imperfectly perfect as it is. And
Mhm.
C.S. Lewis, he had a really good analogy about painting in a canvas being ourselves. And
Mhm.
the more detail that, so his idea was that a canvas is a conscious entity that is us and can feel things. And so the more detailed that you go with the brush, the more painful it is to the canvas. But that allows you to flesh out and create detail and
Mhm.
beauty in that detail. And so that was a little bit of a rant.